Namaskar. Welcome to the 15th episode of the Indian Ad Geek. My name is Vishal Mehra. They say the future is written in code, but our guest today believes it's actually written in poetry. He's the man who famously banned PowerPoints from his pitches, tells billion-dollar companies they have too many employees, and insists that the most important part of your business is the part you can't measure. He's a teacher, an author, a provocateur, and the chief growth officer of our collective imagination. As we wrap up 2025, a year of mergers and machine learning, there is no one better to help us look at 2026 than the author of Rethinking Work and Restoring the Soul of Business, both written by him. Please welcome to the show the one and only Rishad Tobaccowala.
Thank you very much. I'm Indian, I'm an ad person, and I might also be a geek. So therefore, I am the Indian ad geek.
The perfect choice. Rishad, how did you and advertising happen?
Me and advertising happened very quickly in a very strange way. I grew up in India, got a degree in math, came to the University of Chicago, and graduated in 1982. And in those years, it was as now hard to get a job if you did not have a working visa. I had a training visa. One particular company that I was interested in was the one that gave me a job, which was an agency called Leo Burnett in Chicago. And so I took the job and I thought I would stay there a few years, get my green card, and move on. And I spent my entire career at either Leo Burnett or things that came out of Leo Burnett or companies that bought Leo Burnett. And so 1982, I entered Leo Burnett. 1989, we moved from one building to another called the Leo Burnett building. And I worked in the Leo Burnett building as a employee all the way to 2019. And in 2019, I became an advisor to the company. And my key card still works. So I still sometimes go to the Leo Burnett building, which is now almost 45 years after I joined, 44 years after I joined Leo Burnett.
As 2025 draws to a close, we have seen the Omnicom-IPG merger finally materialize. You've seen through every major consolidation wave in this industry. How is this merger different, and what does it signal about the agency business model heading into 2026, Rishad? The merger promises scale integration and data-driven creativity, but why should we believe scale solves the agency industry's fundamental problem, which is relevance, not size?
Yes. So there are three ways I'm going to address this. The first one is there are very smart people in both companies. I know many of them, and they're intensely smart and have business acumen. So I would basically say they probably have very smart and strong reasons, of which I will give you what those are. And then I will address why some of those I buy and some of those I don't not sure about. Okay. So one of them is that by putting themselves together, they will find a way to both get a certain amount of scale that allows them to be a little bit more competitive. And there are two types of scale. There's going to have scale in media spend, because between the two, if you put Omnicom and IPG, so OMD and Universal McCann or whatever, you put all of those together, it becomes again the biggest media buying company in the US for one, and maybe the world. So that gives it a little bit of sort of clout and benefits of scale. Second is Omnicom has things like, they make investments in things like Freewheel, and IPG has investments in things like Axiom, and they could sort of put those together. And so that is one rationale, and there's obviously some benefits to those. There's another rationale, which they don't speak very loudly about. They have, but that they're going to reduce their costs of doing business by avoiding duplication costs, and therefore when they're under price pressure because of things like AI, they're going to basically reduce their cost base and therefore be able to keep their margins going. And they've announced 7,500 jobs. My basically belief is they'll get rid of at least 15,000 people. Okay, at least. Uh, so that is the reason they say a little bit. So a little bit of scale when it comes down to maybe some data integration and media and cost savings to a certain extent. The other thing that they don't say is by merging, they take some capacity out of the industry. In the United States, maybe around the world, there's too much supply of advertising versus demand. And now with Dentsu pretty much giving up in the United States, Publicis being what it is, but IPG and Omnicom connecting, and there may be less supply of advertising, and so there may be a better pricing options. So those are some of those, and there's some good reasons and the bad reasons. I mean, those are somewhat all kind of good reasons, whether they're stated or not stated. Now, here are the challenges, and the three challenges. And again, these are very smart people. They're aware of the challenges, but I'm not sure they're really aware of how big the challenges are. So one challenge is when you put two companies together of that size, it takes 3 to 5 years to integrate. Okay, not 3 to 5 months, right? 3 to 5 years. When Publicis did Sapient, it took us 5 years. Okay, we did Publicis Omnicom, but we didn't pull it off. And there were lots of reasons for it. One is we realized how much there would be internal grappling when you take two things together. So the idea really is, are the benefits that they're going to get, right, be offset by the slowness of integration, the uncertainty, the talent turnover in an age where the game has moved to AI, right? In a game where maybe in many cases scale is not the answer, where agility and flexibility and talent and partnering becomes the answer. So it could be the downside of this is they're solving for yesterday's problems, right? This may have made sense in 2013. That's when actually Publicis and Omnicom tried to merge. Does it make sense in 2026? I'm not sure. Okay. But again, these are very, very smart people. But I do not think this is a wealth creation, growth acceleration move, but it's a move.
And according to you, what does it signal about the agency business model in the future?
So I'm a big believer in two things. I'm a big believer in the world of advertising, media, and marketing. And I've always said people call us dinosaurs, but we're like cockroaches. We scurry around, we outlast everybody. So when everybody says advertising and marketing and media are all dying and everything is going to be automated and we can write a check to Mark Zuckerberg and he'll give us the results, my whole stuff is you people have no idea how this business works. Go away. Okay. So I believe that the industry will continue. Now, what it does say is in order for it to continue, it will reshape itself. And I'm not sure the way Omnicom-IPG is doing it is the way it's going to reshape itself. I would bet very much more on the future of this industry coming from four places. And it's not necessarily Omnicom-IPG. I'm not saying it won't come. They're very smart people, but I'm not sure. If I were putting money on this, so one place I'd put money on, and it's not because I used to work there, it's just because I believe that they're likely a very successful player in the future, is my old place of work, which is Publicis Groupe, which has become very dominant in its field. It grows at 5 to 6%. It wins a lot of clients. I think it's got challenges, but I think that's one model that I think works. The other one is I think you should not underestimate when a company is taken as beaten and then they come back with new leadership. And so I think what Cindy Rose and WPP are doing might be also a dark horse. So the white horse in this, I think, is Publicis. The dark horse in this is WPP. Then I think almost the rest of it is going to come outside of these two companies, which is kind of interesting. So the industry is going to continue, advertising, media, marketing services, creativity. But interestingly, outside of potentially a resurrected WPP and hopefully a Publicis that continues to reinvent itself, those two, I think, are there. So here's the other things that people aren't looking at. One is a large number of regular players who eventually figure out how to get this going, like Accenture, right? They bought Droga 5, they bought a whole bunch of stuff. And now this is coming in to be more and more technology. And so what happens is, if you notice, the CEO of Accenture, who's Julie Sweet, is a technologist. The CEO of WPP, Cindy Rose, is a technologist. I'm not saying it's all about technology, but Deloitte, which is much bigger, it's private, but Deloitte Consulting is very, very strong in this area. So it'll come from these large companies, which go and say to their clients, hey, we can really help you and take the value, which will also include some of the platforms, by the way, the Googles, Metas, etc. But then there's an entire new generation of companies, and that's the one I'm most excited about. Okay. And the new generation of companies are companies that basically are AI first, talent everywhere, massive amounts of partnering. And they're basically saying, if we were to start all over again today with AI, the ability to get talent from anywhere, with ability to partner and plug and play, with APIs and MCPs, what sort of company would we create? And that funded with private equity, which says lots of private equity money, are going to roll up these companies and scale them, but scale them not necessarily in size, but capabilities that clients want at a particular type of scale. Like, what are the capabilities? How do you measure purchase versus just measuring, usage? How do you measure product usage versus just purchase or media, right? How do you measure the impact of creativity and emotion utilizing AI and technology? Because increasingly creativity is going to grow more important in a generative AI age. So how do you measure that? How do you sort of create that? How do you find ways to anticipate versus just personalize? So personalize is yesterday's story, anticipation is tomorrow's story. How do you basically understand that the future of marketing will not just be about scrolling, streaming, and searching, but about conversations, right? So companies that begin to think that way, which is, hey, there's going to be agentic AI, there's going to be agentic stuff, there's going to be a completely new media landscape built on conversations, on AI platforms, right? Some of those partners are likely to be Google and OpenAI, which is again a new partner, but there'll be others. We're going to have to pay as much attention to Perplexity as we may have done to Bing. And those things, right, is very, very important. And then also, how do you actually attract and retain talent where the world's best talent in this case get paid very well? So how do you give them equity, right, versus just salary? So that's the real thing that I would focus on if I were Omnicom-IPG. I take 10% of the best people and say, reinvent the future. Don't think about this. Put the other 90% to scale it and make margin, take money and transfer it into the future.
Accenture, Deloitte, PwC, and other consultancies are competing directly with agencies, telling clients, forget CPMs, let's talk cost per sale.
Yes, so it's all outcome based. So the whole idea is we will deliver outcomes. So the whole idea is how do you measure outcome? How do you measure usage? How do you do it very right? But by the way, brands matter. And brands are, because people choose with their hearts and they use numbers to justify how they just did. Outcomes are very much driven by brand building and not just by finding the right person at the right place at the right time. But they're going to be able to figure those things out. And people who can do that in rapid order are going to be the ones that are going to win.
So, how should agencies position against this existential threat without simply becoming agencies pretending to be consultants?
So agencies, So agencies should basically focus on the three things that consultants do not yet have. They've shown that they don't have. That's the reason they're buying companies like Droga 5, right? And a whole bunch of other companies. So what they don't have is they don't have people who can actually talk about the things that, even though people laugh at it, I think is going to get more important: storytelling, design, provenance, brands, emotions, insights. Because, if you think about it, a brand is, I think storytelling is data with a soul. Just having data doesn't matter. You need also soul. So these companies are particularly good at doing that. That's number one. Second is these companies are also used to dealing with lower levels in the organization. Most of these consultants deal with the higher level in the organization, if that makes sense. Lower level of in the organization, as well as with the higher level of the organization. And the third one
But is that
is,
an advantage? Is that an advantage that you
yeah,
know
yeah,
how
yeah.
to talk
Here's
to
the
the middle
reason.
manager?
Yeah, so here's what happens is the reason the middle manager will be important, even though people think they're going to disappear, they're not, is because at some particular stage, I've learned in the world that after you sell something, you have to deliver it. Okay. Delivery happens with middle management and junior management. Delivery does not happen in the goddamn boardroom under any circumstances. So what basically happens is when it comes down to landing the plane, you can leave with a PowerPoint, a fantastic deck, beautiful visual, but then you got to land it day after day after day, which is what our business is. It's day after day. It's blocking and tackling. It's iterating, right? It's responding. That stuff, the sweatshop of creativity, that's what they don't have. Now, the other one is, let's suppose that they have lots of money and we are good at what we do, then okay, we sell to them and we make money. But in trying to be a light version of them is silly. So I basically believe what you want to do is you want to be very good at what you do, eliminate almost everything that you're not really good at, partner very well with other people, and off you go, right? Because the reality of it is anything in the middle is going to get destroyed. So you have to be very large, very scaled, very big, or very focused and very good at what you do. So what I basically say is be a scale player or a world-class niche player. Okay. In between, who says a little bit of this and a little bit of that, it only makes sense for Goldilocks. It doesn't make sense for anybody else. You either got to be hot or cold because clients are going to combine hot and cold to every color that they want, right? But if you basically say we're sort of warmish, whoever wanted sort of warmish? Nobody did, right? One client may want that particular temperature, but otherwise, are you hot or are you cold? I mean, not hot or cold. Are you big or are you small? Are you across a federation? Are you just a point, not a point, but a very focused solution? And those are the things that will work. So I actually, when I work in private equity, I work with agencies that focus on experience design, right? We created an agency that focused on retail marketing, retail networks, which was sold to Accenture. Uh, that's the way to focus versus a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Right. You've been at the forefront of every major transformation in marketing over the past 4 decades. From the rise of digital to the current AI revolution, you've been there. What fundamental principles have guided you through all these constant waves of change? And how does your concept of the future does not fit in the containers of the past? How does that concept apply specifically to the containers agencies and brands are still clinging on to?
Yeah. So the way to think about it is this. I recently gave a talk a few weeks ago, and in fact, I gave it as a part of a talk, but I gave a full talk on this and then I gave it as a part of a talk. On one piece of advice I give anybody, agencies, senior people, even you, yourself, on how to navigate the future with the learnings that I've had. And the metaphor I use, and this is particularly fun when I do it in the United States these days, is to think like an immigrant. Okay. So here's why. When you are an established company, what you tend to basically do is you tend to focus on what you currently are doing. You focus on your current competitors. You hang out with people in your industry. And if you're very successful, you'll, go to cricket games, sit in boxes, and go to good restaurants and whatever, play golf or whatever is done. Okay. But General Motors and Ford and Honda and BMW were not surprised by other automobile companies. They were surprised by Tesla and Uber. P&G Gillette was not surprised by Schick. It was surprised by Dollar Shave Club. Okay, and Harry's. So what does that mean? Immigrants think like outsiders. So you have to think from outside your category perspective, which a lot of people don't do. Think about how you would attack yourself, not how you would defend. So let's think like an outsider. Second is immigrants think like underdogs because we are. So when somebody tells me I have a castle with a moat, I said, you've got a castle and I've got a source of water with which I will flood you out of your castle. Underdogs basically say your cost structure is my advantage. Your scale is my advantage. Your business model is my advantage because I would take it and turn it upside down. Most recently, we saw TikTok came from nowhere to show that you did not need a social network to challenge Facebook. People thought, okay, Facebook with they have with Instagram, Facebook, they have the social network, and without that social network or social graph, you can't compete. They said you don't need a social graph. Here is an algorithm. You don't need to create content or have any friends to use TikTok. You see how they did it? Asymmetric. So that's think like an underdog. And third is immigrants will take short-term pain for long-term gain. And most of these companies say, my business model doesn't allow that. So I said, that's perfectly fine. Your business model doesn't allow that. Tomorrow you won't have a business. Today your business model doesn't allow it, and tomorrow you won't have a business. So think like an immigrant. Those are the three things I basically learned. Think like an immigrant, which is think like an outsider, think like an underdog, and take short-term pain for long-term gain. And if you don't do that, everything you do, your decks, your M&A, your bullshit talks are zero. I don't believe them at all. And your people don't believe it because your talent is talking all the time. Your talent is comparing salaries. Your talent is comparing what you say to one versus another, right? And that's the other thing very senior management don't recognize. Talent doesn't actually, I think we have a leadership crisis all around the world. I'm not just saying political. I'm saying even in business, right? Most of our leaders are out to sea. And I said, it's too late to retire unless you retire by the end of 2025. The world is changing too fast. If you don't change, get out of the way. Right? And what I'm surprised is I'm supposed to be post-career. I mean, I'm post-career. I'm post-job for sure. I stopped working with a job 6.5 years ago. I go to all the world's greatest companies and tell them about what's going on in the future. And I'm more current than a lot of people who have jobs. Because I have to like hustle like a little frog or whatever it is. Because people say, okay, what do you know? I can't say like I got 106,000 people. They say, you got nobody. You guys got yourself. So I said, yeah, I got to be really good. Right? And so what tends to basically happen is I said, look, I'm 66 years old and I'm learning like I'm 24. I don't understand why you're 50 and claiming that you can't do shit. That wakes people up. That's what this is. This eventually is about people. It's not about technology. That's my biggest learning. Okay. We keep thinking it's about technology, doing M&A, buying something. No, no, no. It's about how you change, how the business model changes, how your team changes, how your culture changes. That's what you want.
Waking people up reminds me of your book, Rishad, Restoring the Soul of Business. You argue for balancing data with humanity, and you describe marketing as the fusion of poetry, which is storytelling. You were just talking about it, and plumbing, which is business mechanics.
Which is all the media. And what has happened is in this industry, most of our up to now, most of the 90% of what we were making advances on was the plumbing. Now, because of generative AI, we're going to make advances in the poetry too. Because now you can actually create 25 different commercials cost effectively versus taking the same thing and changing the price or the color or the weather, right? So you can interaction. So that's one thing. So my basic belief is the future is plumbing and poetry, story and spreadsheet, math and meaning. Or math and magic.
Right. With AI making knowledge nearly free, how can agencies differentiate themselves through the poetry side of marketing? And should they flip the script and pitches to lead with plumbing to compete with consultancies that we were just talking about?
So here's the stuff. Here's what's basically happened is I think what has been commoditized is not the poetry but the plumbing, right? I think the plumbing is what's being at the poetry. There are lots of tools that allow everybody to make great poetry. So you don't have to basically have a huge budget to basically create a fantastic commercial these days. Okay. So, but here's the key. I believe the key is AI plus HI. Okay. I don't call AI artificial intelligence. I call it alien intelligence because it's like a human being, but it ain't exactly human, right? Increasingly, it speaks to you. In the US, people are having relationships with it. So I call it AI. So AI plus HI. So AI is not artificial intelligence, it's alien intelligence. HI, interestingly, is not human intelligence because I believe human intelligence was beaten a long time ago by these stupid machines. Okay. HI is human insight, human ideation, human imagination, human iteration, right? And that is the creative business. It's the research business. It's the insight business. It's the understanding that people choose with their hearts and use numbers to justify what they just did business, which, by the way, is the business that agencies historically have been good at. Okay. Um, and so, in effect, it's returning to the core, but recognizing that the game is the same, but the tools are very different. And you have to learn the new tools, otherwise, you won't be able to play the game.
You've said we'll see billion-dollar companies with fewer than 100 employees, right?
Yes.
And that scale can become a
And that's
liability.
that's $1 billion in revenue, not $1 billion in market cap, because those have happened with
Yeah.
WhatsApp and Instagram. But $1 billion of
We've seen that
revenue,
with OnlyFans, 40
yeah,
people.
40 people with 100 employees, you'll get because right now the current ratio that I'm seeing, just so you know, the best talent-based AI companies, and I wrote one of the pieces in my Substack called "The Future of Work is Less and More," right? And there I give a link to a place which shows the revenue and employees of the leading AI companies. And so you can then actually see the ratio of revenue per employee. So currently, the ratio is about $4 million of revenue per employee. So therefore, at 100 employees, you have about $400 million, right? So I expect that will improve. So eventually, you'll get to $1 billion. Other people talking about $1 billion one person company. That's only if you're Taylor Swift. Okay, that doesn't happen too much. But you could get 100 people billion-dollar companies.
This terrifies large agency networks. For Indian agency leaders who've spent their entire career building scale and headcount, how do they mentally and operationally flip to small teams' massive impact? And how should they view the future role of network agencies versus specialist boutiques and consultancies?
One is obvious, and the other one, even though I'm talking to people in India, I'm going to use an analogy, but it'll piss people off, but I don't care. Okay, it's the best analogy I got. Okay, not piss people off. I understand I'm talking to India, but one of the key things is I think the biggest problem with the agency business is after everything we say and we do, we basically sell butts and seats, FTEs. Okay, so we needed to get more and more of what I call cows, and we sold as many cows as we could. But over time, I began to realize that clients were not interested in cows. They were interested in the milk. Okay. They were not interested in the goddamn cows. And we kept selling cows, 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 cows. And so our business is basically built on how many hours we can charge for. But AI basically comes and says, we can do things much faster. You don't have so many hours to charge for. So that's the challenge. Now, here is the analogy I'm going to basically give you, which I understand I'm talking to India, where the cow is holy, and in many cases, beef is banned. Fine, that's okay. But this is the analogy. The analogy is you should no longer be in the cow selling business. You should no longer be in the hamburger selling business. You can get more money for hamburgers than cows. You should be in the steak selling business or the A5 Wagyu beef steak selling business. So I'll give you an idea. If today people work with me, okay, what I charge them for doing something, like I go and give a talk, okay, on paper, it's my delivery time is 1 hour. So I'm actually giving a talk for 1 hour, right? I get paid exactly the same as I got paid when I was at Publicis for 1 week. So I give 50 1 hour talks. So one 1 hour talk a week, and I make more than I made at the highest level I made at Publicis. And there I was senior, but my job was to sell cows. And what I just basically did was I said there's one cow, which is me, but I'm not even selling that cow as one cow. I'm selling it as ounces of A5 Wagyu beef. And the buyer basically says, I'm only buying this much, so it's damn cheap in absolute cost. It's so cheap, we get you for so cheap, right? And I say, yeah, in my mind, that's fantastic. But for me, you're paying for a week for an hour. They're saying is we're getting 52 weeks of your thinking or 50 years of your thinking for 1 week's salary. And I'm saying I'm getting 1 hour for 1 week. That's what you have to do, which basically means world-class talent doing world-class things that are measurable, right? Versus mediocre talent doing lots of things that are not measurable. So you want to get closer and closer to that.
Let's talk about AI for a bit. I was going through your Goa Fest 2025 keynote, and you said the worst thing a brand can do is to have an AI strategy. Can you elaborate on why companies should integrate AI into their entire business strategy rather than treating it as a separate initiative?
So there are three reasons for it. The first is um, I think AI is as big as, you know, fire, the printing press, electricity. Okay. Do you have in your company a electricity strategy? Or do you use electricity across your entire company? Do you have an electricity division? Do you have a company, right? Right. So in effect, you are not going to be, that's one. Second is you're going to be competing with companies who are designing around AI while you have a section thinking about AI, right? And so to a great extent, what does that mean? Like you're going to be competing with people where AI itself is not going to be a differentiator. All these AI, everybody says, I got an AI strategy that differentiates me. I said, bullshit. You're using exactly the same 7 LLMs as everybody else is. Okay. By utilizing AI as a input into your company and rethinking your business model and rethinking what your clients need, which means rethinking your entire strategy, that's your differentiator, not a stupid AI strategy. So that's number one. I was the first person who said that, and recently now Google is saying that, which is kind of interesting, copying me a year later without attribution. That's okay. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, which is very important, is think about it like this. I worked for some time, I was consulting with New York Times, even when I was at Publicis in what was they call the Innovation Project. As New York Times was trying to figure out how to deal with the digital world. Okay. And this is the example I give people. If you think AI is its own strategy, then what the New York Times would have done is what every other newspaper had done, which is use digital to figure out how to basically make their printing presses work faster, how to make their trucks and algorithms of their trucks so they can drink, how to buy paper cheaper, right? That's what happens when you have AI, right, as a strategy. How do I do my digital strategy? What they did actually was, how will digital change my entire business? Will I need printing presses? Will I need page one meetings? Will I need trucks? Today, for every person, every newspaper they sell, subscribed newspaper seller, they have 11 digital online people. They don't think of themselves as print, they think of themselves as multimedia. 30% of their business. So they reimagined their business. This is what companies are doing. They're using AI for efficiency and effectiveness, but not for existential opportunity to redefine their businesses. So understand how AI will change the strategy of your firm, how AI will change your business model, how AI will change your competitive. So I have written my second book called Rethinking Work. And in that, I'm talking to a lot of world-class players. And so if you go to rethinkingwork.io and you click on show, there's going to be this interview with a person who's written a book called Reshuffle, which is the best book about thinking about AI as strategy. His name is Sangeet uh, Paul Gupta and Sangeet Das Gupta, and he's based in Dubai, Indian origin. He's absolutely amazing. And he basically shows, we have a conversation for 45 minutes where he shows how how you change your strategy of your firm, right? So if people go to rethinkingwork.io, click on show and look for Sangeet Paul Chowdhury interview, which is 4 or 5 down. You'll begin to see how to do it, right? And he uses the example of the container ship. The container did not just change shipping, it changed everything from globalization to just-in-time inventory to, manufacturing And that's what AI will. It will completely reconfigure your entire business while you're thinking of your stupid AI strategy.
Now that you have mentioned it, let's talk about your latest book, Rethinking Work. One of the things that stood out for me, Rishad, was your prediction that 60 to 80% of company workforces will be freelance or contract based. How will this transformation impact traditional agency structures or client relationships? And how must they redesign incentives and career ladders to retain the next generation of makers and strategists?
I've been writing a lot about that, and a lot of people basically say, okay, you've had too much to drink. What are you talking about? So I've got a lot of data that supports it, and since I've written it, all indications are it's moving even faster in that direction. So, give you an idea. Today, the biggest thought I have here is this, which is not a line I've got in the book, but over time I've discovered this particular line, which is jobs and work are not the same thing. Okay. And what basically has happened is companies are organized around jobs versus work to be done. So it's a very simple analogy. Until 200 years ago, lots of work got done, but very few people had jobs. Then, because of industrialization, centralization, electricity, everything else, we had more jobs. But even today, if you look at over the world, 38% of people who work have jobs, 62% work without a job, broadly, right? So if someone's working in agriculture in India, they don't have a job, they work, right? So there's a whole bunch of people who drive their own car, taxis, they work, they don't have a job. So work and job are not the same thing. The big thing is in a lot of agencies, we've organized around jobs versus work to be done. And jobs are going to go away, but the opportunity to work and make money is not. The analogy I give is music. If you think about it today, if you want to, the outcome is I'd like to have romantic music for an evening, or I want to have music that I can run to, or I want to listen to music that brings back memories of India. So then I click on my Indian playlist, or I click on romantic. Either I've made it or there's a pre thing. Do I basically have a song? Do I buy CDs? Do I buy any of those? None of that. So as a result, I get the outcome, which is the joy and what music brings me without having to buy all the contraptions around music. Similarly, companies deliver outcomes. Outcomes is by work done, not by jobs filled. Okay, now that's one. Now, if you think about where we're going to, which is it's very fast moving, you got to manage your cost structure, you got to get the talent wherever you can get. Why would you basically tell people to come into an office in an expensive city like Bombay, sit there 5 days a week, and expect to compete with companies starting today with talent anywhere AI first, right? And one of the guests I've had is a Harvard Business School professor, the very first one. He has written a book called The World is Your Office, showing the data as to how companies who operate like this not only are more profitable and faster, but they have stronger cultures. So these people say, everyone's got to be together for culture. I said, bullshit. Culture doesn't require space. It requires in-person interaction and leadership. It doesn't require an office. Here's what I would do. I would basically say in a company, if you're joining an ad agency today for the first 2 years, if you're new, I want you to come to the office 5 days a week and you're going to get trained. Okay. If you're intensely senior, you probably have to be here more often to both train people and meet with clients. For most of the rest of you who are grappling with aging parents, childhood, children, figuring out how to not live too close to the city, you have a little bit more flexibility. So I'm having different models for different people. Then with the money I save, I basically tell everybody once every quarter for 3, 4 days, we're going to all gather in Goa or Lonavala or Khandala. And we're going to have 4 days or 5 days of interaction, learning, and training. You'll get every single benefit of culture, interaction, learning, training without having an office and forcing people with exactly the same model 5 days a week. Why aren't you doing that? That's because most of our management refuse to reimagine their own selves. They're still going back to 2019, right? So people say, well, people are being forced back. I said, look, the reality of it is people are being forced back today for two reasons. One is it's a way for American companies to get rid of people without severance because the best people and women don't come back that much. Okay. Second is the lack of goddamn imagination. The reality of it is, fine, Jamie Dimon spent $3 billion building a big building in order to get people in, and the spaces are horrible, horrible. I was just looking at them. They're like pigsties that you have to go like a pig and you sit there. To make it valuable, he has 19 restaurants. I can get restaurants everywhere in the goddamn world, man. This is New York City, right? Because this is this is called zone of control bullshit management versus zone of influence management. And that's the thing. We have a leadership crisis. I tell the leaders of every company, not just advertising agencies, look yourself in the goddamn mirror and say, if you were young again, would you do this shit again? Like the way you're doing it. Right? And so I've actually given this thing, which is I've written this piece called Forever Young, which is you have to stay forever young. And so I always come back to reimagining, reinventing oneself, reimagining and reinventing the organizational design, much more than saying it's about technology.
You've also mentioned that AI is still underhyped despite all the current attention.
AI is completely underhyped. And the reason it's completely underhyped, despite what everybody says, I'll give you three very simple reasons for it. Number one is because of computation, the cost of compute's come down 10 million times in the last 40 years. Because of the internet, the cost of distribution of certain kinds of material and data have come down to zero. AI is going to make the cost of knowledge zero, and we're all knowledge workers. That's number one. Number two, fire basically allowed us to eat better, therefore our brains grew. The printing press allowed us to share what we knew in our brains with other brains. Electricity allowed us to basically control the world around us with our brains. AI basically replaces our brains with another brain. I'm just giving you examples how big this is.
What specific AI applications and capabilities do you think will most transform the advertising industry in the next 2 to 3 years that people are not fully grasping yet?
The single biggest one is going to be agentic AI, right? So this is bigger than generative AI. So agentic AI is when the AI does work for you. So in technology companies, 33% of the Slack interactions are between people and agents. McKinsey today has 40,000 employees and 12,000 agents, right? So in effect, you could run an agency with 50 people and 1,000 agents and scale like really fast. Why those agents are much cheaper to run than those 50 people. But you need those 50 people with those 1,000 agents, make it incredible. Those 50 people have to be world class. So you pay a lot to those 50 people plus the 1,000 agents, right? The other is agentic means search is disappearing with conversation. So if you haven't, it's available for free. Try the new Atlas. Obviously, if you've got Google, you already have Gemini, sort of plugged into it. But even more radical is try the new OpenAI Atlas Chrome browser, Chromium browser, right? Where basically you can talk to it and it'll basically do things like you can say, I'd like to go to an Indian restaurant in Chicago for less than $50. In this neighborhood, can you make a reservation? And it does it. It just goes, it opens up all the tabs, it clicks it in the front of you and says reservation. Here it is, delivered. Okay. That's the big thing that people don't realize. The speed of change of AI, of Moore's law was doubling every 18 months. Of regular AI was every 7 months. Of agentic AI, it's every 8 weeks, doubling. Okay. And that's what people don't realize.
Okay. To that, I now have a follow-up question. 2025, this year, saw AI tools move from being assistants to co-creators in so many different ways. How should marketers decide from what to automate and what to protect as distinctly human territory? And what new capabilities should creative teams hire for? Versus which roles should be retired or reinvented, like you were talking about?
So anything that basically can be that has a lot of left brain thinking, anything that has a lot of data processing, anything that has repeat, that it's done on a repetitive basis, that has a lot of data, that has a lot of math, and has a lot of processing or having to have multiple steps, should basically be done by the machines, right? And then it should be overseen by people who see what the machines do and offset it. And then what you should be hiring for is curiosity which is what if and why not, creativity, which is an expression of self or connecting dots in new ways, cognition, which is people's ability to continuously learn, collaboration, which is how they work with each other and with this alien intelligence, convincing, which is how do you tell stories and sell when everybody's got the same knowledge, and communication, which is great writing and presenting skills. Okay, that's what you want to do. No longer about learning code in Mandarin. Okay, and all of those things I don't see many companies and leaders do, and that's why I'm in busy. I'm going to the biggest companies in America, talking to them, and they say, "How come nobody told us that?" And I said, "Because they're trying to sell you the old shit. They're not telling you about the new world order, right?" And I said, "I have nothing to sell you. I got a book. I'll make $3 if you buy my $20 book or $15 book, and in India I'll make 10 rupees. It sells for less than 370 rupees in India." And because I grew up in India, I insisted my book got launched in India the same day it got launched in the United States. Okay. And a lot of people are buying it. And my whole stuff is read the book, right? People all over America and the world are buying it. And I said, it's basically a way to think about this and what to do. I've got all of the answers. I don't have the answers. I have ways to think about it because the answers depend on your company, your industry, your country, your situation. I can't give you the answer, but I can say if you follow this thinking, you are likely to come up with a better answer. And in addition, if you can listen to the people I'm interviewing on Rethinking Work Show, which are all free interviews, you'll see different people trying to solve this. Companies who are launching AI agents, professors who are basically thinking about stuff, heads of agencies who are reimagining their agencies, Gen Z who are questioning why they're working for agencies. It's not just agencies that look broader than business. And by the way, all of the stuff I do, this is the thing that people need to understand. I have 3 different platforms. I have a Substack, a podcast, a YouTube channel, but against the future doesn't fit in the categories of the past, which has What Next, a whole bunch of books on it. I have Rethinking Work, which has a YouTube show, the book, speaking, all kinds of other stuff. I have the Athena Project, which is less public about modern leadership, which has events. Can you tell me how many employees all those 3 things have with worldwide reach, books produced, everything else, Substacks, everything? You're looking at the person. One, right? That's what this world is about.
And for the benefit of our listeners, the links to Rishad's website, Substack, and podcasts will be in the description. Rishad, Google, Meta, and Amazon's AI powered ad platforms now automate about 80% of media buying, giving agencies minimal visibility into where ads run or how they perform. Clients ask, "What did you do?" And agencies increasingly answer, "We trusted the algorithm." Is this the end of media expertise as a differentiator?
So there are 3 answers to that. One is if you basically just say, I gave it to Google and Google did it and I tell the algorithm, it's absolutely, that's a client will ask, why the hell do I hire you in the first place? Okay. Now, that's going to be actually true for about 60 to 70% of clients, but those are not what most agencies work with. So what most people don't realize is 70 to 80% of the revenue of Meta and Google come from small and medium businesses, right? 1 to 10 people companies who don't have agencies, right? It's not the Colgate Palmolives or the Reckitt's or anybody else. So those people basically have far more complicated worlds. And those worlds are basically not just a Google world, not just a Meta world, not just an Amazon world, but also basically a television world, a magazine world, experience world, an in-store world, a retail world. And so the whole idea is how do you connect all of those become very important. Second is when you're working with the Googles and everything else. One of the reasons, and it's not the only way of doing it, one of the reasons that Publicis has been as successful as it has is because Maurice Levy and myself many years ago figured out that we had to find a way to differentiate ourselves against the platforms. And the way we thought about it is the platforms basically have their own little silos of data, and we needed to ride across all of those, and that would be value add to the clients, right? Because the clients had to work across all those platforms. But in order to do that, we needed something unique, which was first-party data, which is why we spent $4 billion to buy Epsilon, right? And then we basically also recognize, in addition to them, there are in these platforms and everything else, there's a new type of creative company. It's called the influencer. So we bought a lot of influential companies. So the whole idea basically is you can stay ahead of these folks, but you also have to recognize that your clients are talking to these companies, have deep relationships with these companies. And what you have to do is not work against these companies, but how do you complement, right? And provide additional services on top of what they provide. And many of these people provide just the basic. They don't want to get into the managed service business. It does not have my margin. They don't want to get into the client holding business, right? It's too emotionally fraught. But what basically happens is if you combine all of those things, you can have something very, very interesting. Or you focus very narrowly on one thing, like some of the agencies that I'm working with does. They focus on narrowly on one thing and become really good. And those are complementary to these platforms. But if you're just going to basically say, I trusted the algorithm, your client is going to say, okay, I don't need you.
Staying on that, I've been part of the agency world for over 18 odd years. Traditional monthly retainers are dying because clients can't see the value. What's the business model that actually works in 2026? How should agencies price strategic work that has long term brand value but unclear short term attribution?
So I think the business model that will basically work is a business model that has always basically worked, which is try to basically understand just three simple things and build everything around it. The first thing, which is extremely important, is try to understand what the client's customer or consumer wants and how they're changing. Your value to your client is to not understand their business better than them. You cannot. It's to better understand people and consumers outside of the filters of their category. So understand how people are using media differently, how they're making decisions differently, what drives them, what are their hopes and dreams. So that's whether you call it consumer or people or customer or member or user, great and detailed insights about them, which are one very thing that's important. So always understand your consumer. Then link it to your customer and obviously understand what your customer's needs are that are not being met or that you can meet better in understanding those consumer needs. So you go to the client and say, these are new consumer needs. Some of these we can help you meet or some we cannot help you meet. And once you do that, the third is then to partner with, decide which of those things delivery you can do particularly well and which other people can do well, either who you can partner with or your client already has a partner, and then go forth and prosper. So what you're doing is you're keeping the following things in mind. You're keeping the end consumer that is actually making money for your customer. You're understanding your customer, understanding where the weaknesses are. You're then figuring out what you're good at, what other people are not good at, and you're combining it together. So it basically simply says, your customers, I'll give you a description. Your customers, for some strange reason, now want a combination of pav bhaji and bhel puri together in one dish. That's an insight you've had. Now, for some reason, that's an insight. But it has to be mixed in a particular way, otherwise it doesn't taste good. So we've discovered that. By the way, we are very good at making a particular type of salt and a particular type of save and a particular type of tomato that actually makes that thing happen. And we can do that. And then these other people can do these other things and we'll plug those in and we'll do it together. Now the client is basically happy, right? They're saying, you're helping us sell more. You're telling us what the issue is. You're telling us what you're good at. You're partnering with other people. I trust you. I'll pay you for what you're doing. You keep building and honing those skills. And over time, you say, okay, maybe the future is that I have to build not, tomato capability. I got to build red chili capability. I mean, green chili capability, whatever that is.
Your newsletter explores the shift from fitting into a company's story to how companies fit into our life stories. How should Indian brands approach this mindset shift, especially with younger consumers like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, who are the most marketing immune generation ever in so many ways, if I can say that?
So what you saw that they're very savvy. They're actually very easy to market to if you actually understand them. But the thing is, they want authenticity. They want belonging. They want a sense of ownership. They want to be recognized that they themselves are media companies. Like, no longer is your consumer a young person just a consumer. They're a media company in their own way. Like I remind people, every employee of your company is a media company. They are on TikTok, they're on WhatsApp, they're on whatever, on Instagram, on whatever it is, LinkedIn. So how come we are thinking about it? So we have this generational divide. The more senior people versus the junior people. Now, I have numbers from all over the world. I don't have India specific numbers. I have Asian numbers broadly like Singapore, and I have China numbers, and I have US numbers. But I'll give you three things for the older audience who listens to this, or what I call more seasoned, well, like me. And these are not specific US, I mean, not specific India, but they're the average of US and Singapore and China. So maybe they're like India in some way. So people who are older, like myself, 10% of us want to work for ourselves. Gen Z, 76% want to work for themselves. People who have a full-time job who are older, almost nobody who's older has another job. 67% of Gen Z who have a full-time job have a side hustle or side gig with which they're making money. Okay. And the reason basically is they're basically saying, we know that our company will lay us off the moment they can. We need optionality. We need choices. We need to not just basically say we worked for Leo Burnett, but we want to say Leo Burnett was a place that worked with Rishad Tobaccowala. Right? I want to basically today, people call me not because, I mean, obviously they call me because I had a good history at my old place of work, but it's been 6.5 years since I was an employee of Publicis. I control no budgets. I do nothing. I built my own story. I've become a company of one. And I tell people, even if you're in a large company, work like a company of one. A company of one doesn't mean I, me, mine. You can't work like that. A company of one means build a world-class skill that is portable, then you can take with you. If you build a world-class skill, you're very valuable to your company and people will call you. Second is build a reputation for being extremely easy to work with. People will want to work with you inside your company and then from outside your company. Third, let people know and build a reputation that you're continuously growing and constantly learning. If you do that, you become a company of one. I operated like a company of one in a company of 106,000 for 20 of my 37 years. So when I became a company of one, while I still remain connected to my old company, it was very easy for me because in effect, people said, Rishad's very good at change and he's very good at future and he's very good at this. Okay. He's easy to work with. He's used to return my calls, right? He's partners with other people. I'll call him. I'll give him a gig. I'll give him a job. I'll give him a chance, right? What if I basically was only known as a Publicis guy? I hid inside Publicis. I wasn't well. When people from call outside, you realize I work for 106,000. I'm Saab. Who the hell are you? Get the hell out of my face. Guess what happens when you're by yourself? All these people suddenly realize nobody cared about them. They cared about the budgets and the company they worked for. So I said, don't get yourself in a position. Young people are now realizing, I said, have optionality. The more you have options outside, your company will take you seriously. The more you're world class at a skill, your company will take you seriously. The more you're loyal, but you are not known outside and you don't have a world class skill, the company will get rid of you.
Rishad, I have few questions now on pitching, couple of questions. You've started and helmed different agencies. You famously said you deliver perspectives, provocations, and plans of action, but no PowerPoints. In an age where AI can generate beautiful pitch decks in minutes, what should agencies actually be showing clients instead? And what is that one element that separates a pitch that wins from one that merely impresses?
So the most popular thing I've ever written on my Substack, that's been run hundreds of thousands of times, is the answer to that question. Okay. It's called Rethinking Presentations. So if anybody types in ChatGPT or Google or whatever, Rishad Tobaccowala Rethinking Presentations, it will show up. And what it is it basically says, this is how to pitch and win with a 9-slide presentation. No more than 9 slides, right? And I'm going to tell you how it gets done right now in a minute. It's so simple. The deck that you've written, whether it's with ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or all your little interns, that 1,000-page lover of a thing, that's slide number 9. It's called appendix. There's your slide number 9, appendix. Done. Okay. Then you start with slide 8. What's the order? At the end of the meeting, what are you trying to do?
Well,
Get hired
I
as an
try to
agency?
summarize.
Yeah. So just one simple thing I want. I don't even want a summary. I want just one thing. What are you asking for? So when I end on 8, right? My slide, I would say, I wanted to buy my book. Okay. I wanted to hire me. What is that? Not a summary of what they've said. What do you want me to do now? Right? What is the action you want at the end of the deck? So many people give decks for decks. Oh, we had a great deck. Well, what's that? What's a great deck? At the end of it, the meeting is not successful when you've got a great deck. The meeting is successful if you've won the pitch, if they've hired you, if they've brought you to the next meeting. That's what's successful. So ask, what's the order? Put that at number 8. Then you write the remaining 7 slides to get to number 8. That's all you care about. Not a deck. Number 8. What's the order? Right? Then you write slide 4, 5, and 6. 4 is, do you have an insight about their market or their customer? Even one insight, put it in 4. Number 5, do you have a way for them to reimagine their category, to rethink things? What's that? Slide number 6 is, do you have an idea for them? Do you have an insight about the marketplace, their competitors, or your consumer? That's the insight, imagination, and rethinking their category, and an idea. 4, 5, 6. So now you have 8, which is the order, 9, which is the appendix, and you have 4, 5, 6. 7 is examples of why they should believe you. 3 or 4 case studies. Just list them. You don't have to, I can do that, right? Slide number 3 is your agenda, which basically says, I have ideas, insights, case studies, imagination. In what order do you want me to do this? It's not even an agenda. It basically says it's a map. Tell me how you want to go. Slide number 2 is something that basically wakes them up. Like when I spoke to Visa, I said, when I was a long time ago, I said, here's why credit cards might be dead. That's slide number 2. That wakes them up. Right? And slide number 1 is a spicy title. Okay. So you have a spice. So that's how you do it. You basically write the outcome, slide 8, work on an idea and insight and imagination, have some case studies that support the ideas, and write a map, write a amazing thing that wakes them up in slide 2, have a spicy title, and you win the pitch. Period. Over and out. It's always worked. The problem is most companies, guess what they don't have? They don't have an idea. They don't have imagination. They don't have insight. What they have is, this is how we work as an agency. This is our process. These are our clients. Who the hell cares? Right? As I tell people, you're telling me how your colon works. You're not showing me any cool shit.
And I'm guessing you were pitching digital payments, or you were talking about digital payments to Visa?
Yeah. I was basically, I was also talking about certain parts of their business that would be undone by blockchain, right? And the rise of things like pay now, buy later, which are rising, all of those things. And that's what they're interested in. But the other thing is what I always tell people is you can never go into a pitch arrogant, you lose. You can never go into a pitch humble, because they'll say, like, why are you so humble? So you need to go into a pitch confident. They need to look in your eyes and say, this is the company, these are the people who are going to take me to the future. Not, Mem Saab, what are we going to do? So nice. Forget about that. That's stupid. That's like boot thing. On the other hand, you can't say, I'm so cool. You get kicked out then too, right? So you basically say, look, I'm here to give you insights, ideas, and imagination to help you grow.
In fact, my next question to you was going to be, from your experience, when does an incumbent agency lose a pitch before they even enter the room? What mistakes do incumbents repeatedly make?
So an incumbent agency loses a pitch for 3 reasons. And I know how to solve for all those 3. The first reason is they take the client for granted. Right? They basically say, we have them as a client. Senior management doesn't show up. So they take him for granted. That's number 1. Number 2, is they basically start moving some of the best people on their business off and put other people. And so they fray relationships and they say, I hired these people, and who are these people who are now your agencies are a group of people. They're not like some sort of other thing. My people are all gone, right? So you have a people turnover problem, or you take them for granted. And the other one is they have a sneaky suspicious that you don't understand the future. Okay, 3 reasons. A client simply says, you took me for granted, you changed the team on my business. I don't think you can get me into the future. You're very good for the present. Those are the 3 reasons agencies get into trouble. And I will tell you what you do. This presentation that I just told you, I would basically, one of the things people don't realize is, yeah, Publicis wins a lot. What people don't realize is Publicis almost never loses a client. Right? Winning a lot, if you've got a whole bunch of churn, is a big fat problem. Okay. It's even more because really because new clients are very, very expensive to get. In the first year or 2, you lose money or you make break even. A client you've had, never take him for granted, so they don't lose him. So here's what I suggested, what we used to do, at least in the business I would oversee. I would go to my existing clients every 6 months with exactly this deck I said, and I would basically pitch them on a new idea. So I would actually do a new business pitch without them calling me a new business pitch every 6 months on an idea, right? So many, many years ago, before anybody talked about AI, this is like 10 years ago, one of my large clients from Bank of America, I went to Bank of America and I basically said, I'd like to talk to you about the future. Here are 4 or 5 topics. Which one do you like? They said AI. So we said, I said, get all your senior management. We're going to have a 2-hour conversation. I paid money. I brought in some of the best people outside and inside the organization, including from MIT, right? It was like a new business pitch. Nobody had called a pitch, right? It was like a new business pitch. And I would do that every 6 months on different topics. So what did that do? The client said, these people aren't taking me for granted. They're constantly coming with all their senior management, right? We matter. Number 2, they're constantly coming with where the world is going, new ideas. So they are of the future. Yes, they're handling my current business. Yes, they're of the future, right? And so they're not taking me for granted. Yes, they're of the future. And because I'm talking to them, I'm asking them, how is the team, right? And I'm also then, because I'm getting to know them, I'll say, okay, this person I got to take out because I got to promote them, but I got to bring this person in, and we're going to do this over the next 6 months. At which particular stage they say, you're managing my current business with my team. You're visiting me with all your senior management every 6 months with new ideas. I like you. I mean, obviously we have to deliver all of the stuff, but at least I haven't got myself into a hole of taking them for granted, changing people on them without talking to them, or making them think that I'm only focused on today and not tomorrow. So as I tell people, you get fired if you don't deliver today. You get hired for delivering tomorrow, which means once you basically get hired, if you're only working on delivering today, someone else is visiting them and saying, I will take you to tomorrow, and this company can only do today, right? And that is the magic that, I mean, a lot of different companies, Publicis has created that, but a lot of people have created that. And I've been even giving people the model how to do it, and they still don't do it. So that's why I think it's not a technology thing, right? I don't think it's a knowledge thing. I just believe it's a leadership thing. I believe it's a drive thing, because all of these things require people to hustle. So people, even today, they say, like, you work like a dog. And I said, like, I'm not dead yet. I don't understand what you want me to do. Play golf, travel in a plane all over the place? What's the problem, right? And I said, I can't just come around and say, in my old days, 7 years ago, I did this, and 8 years ago, I did that. Okay, that's, you sit there in the Wellington Club and have, chutney sandwiches and talk like that. That's not basically a business. That's like nostalgia.
Over the next 3 to 5 years, which revenue streams will grow fastest and which will shrink for creative firms?
The more we can basically find ways to link to business results or other deliverables that are measurable by the client and get to those results and get a portion of those as our fee are the businesses that are going to win. Businesses that we are only staffing with people, and if those staffing are not on the creative, insight, imagination part of the business, but it's on stuff that machines can do better, more and faster, we will lose. What we have to do is we have to get out of the FTE business or reduce our reliance on the FTE business and be much more on the outcome and delivery business, find ways to both measure it and get a benefit. It takes time, it takes 3-4 years, etc. If we don't do that, we will get ourselves into problems. Okay. And that is what I'm suggesting to people that we basically do. And when you do that, because now you're no longer an expense, you're basically you're sharing a portion of the upside. Okay. Clients basically believe that you're aligned with the outcome. And the more upside you drive because you're sharing a portion of the upside, the more you get. In a very strange way, it's going back to the old agency model with one slight and very big difference. I believe the agency system started going to hell in a handbasket when we moved from non-commission to hourly based. That's when procurement came in and cost management came in, etc. The nice thing about commission was it was based on billings. And in those days, it was like the more your advertising worked, the more the client spent, and you got 15%. Okay. But it was 15% of spending. We're going, I think, into a new world where if agencies can get 5% of the profit generated by their work, it'll be bigger than 15% of spending, and it will be something that clients are more willing to pay for. Okay. One of the reasons clients weren't willing to pay for that is 15% of spending when there was a massive rise in inflation made no sense. Okay, immediate inflation. But 5% of outcomes, or whatever, I'm not saying 5%, whatever the right number of outcomes, people will do it. And the reason why is because that's how the entire world of Google works. Guess what you do? You bid against each other till your marginal cost and marginal return, right? That's how YouTube works. The creator gets 70%, YouTube gets 30%, or whatever it is. Nobody cares. I'm making a whole bunch of money and you're helping me make a bunch of money and you get a small part of it all day long, right? That's the model. It takes 3, 4, 5 years. It's not an overnight thing, but we have to go there. And if not, people who figure that out, and in that meanwhile, remove every cost that doesn't add value. And unfortunately, and this is a horrible thing to say, senior management look in the goddamn mirror and ask why you're paid so much. Are you doing anything for this new world order, or are you just sitting around with zones of control? You're the goddamn cost structure. You can be replaced with 5 amazing young people if you're not going to hustle.
And my final question to you, Rishad. Suggest one book everyone on a marketing team should read, and any favorite podcasts for you these days that you'd like to share with all of us.
So my favorite marketing book of all time is the first marketing book. It's sort of out of print now. It's called The Principles of Marketing by Philip Kotler. Okay. Who is at Northwestern. I went to the University of Chicago. It was the marketing book, if that makes sense. And in there, it had a line called "Marketing is Understanding and Meeting Customer Requirements," and I built a lot of my career out of that line. A lot of that book is outdated. The P's have been replaced by other things, etc. But that was my favorite because it kept getting updated and edited. My new marketing book, in a very strange thing, which people have to go Google and find. I'm not sure it's available in India, but I'm sure you can get it. I'm sure but you have to get it in the physical form because it doesn't work in any other form. It's by an author called Walter Murch. Suddenly something clicked. So it's sort of on the expensive side. But in India, it may be cheaper when they make it available.
Well,
in the
it's
US, it's
a bit expensive in India too, but the Kindle version is affordable,
okay.
but it's available
Okay.
in India.
Okay, so there it is. So get that. Okay, here's the reason why you want to get that. That is about the best thing why I call it the best marketing book is it's the best thing I've read in a long time, and I'm still reading it. because it's beautiful. It's basically written, Walter Murch is the world's greatest living movie and sound editor, right? He did movies like The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, English Patient, Conversation. And this is at the end of his life. He's written 900 pages. This is the first 300 pages is this thing on how you creativity through editing of sound and video. But in effect, it's actually about the world of marketing, change, moving of technologies from film to Avid to digital, right? How you tell stories, how people things come together, what a creative process is, how underlying technologies change. It's beautiful. And why I like it a lot, I'm sure this will be available also in the Kindle version, is as you're reading it, okay, he has QR codes on the side. And when you click on the QR code, you actually see what he's talking about in video or listen to it in sound. My favorite podcasts are the Knowledge Project, and all of these are free. There's a paid version, but these are free. The Knowledge Project by Shane Parrish. That's one. And he talks to lots of different people, and you have 150 of them who are trying to, gain knowledge and sort of grow all the time. A second one, which I find particularly, very impactful, is something which is basically really about founders and how founders have started companies and histories of founders. It's called Founders, and the person who's done it is called David Senra, Davdsenra. So I'll give you an idea. His last two episodes are things like how NVIDIA's Jensen works, how Elon works, how the head of Hyundai works, things like that, which I think people can sort of learn from. So that's the second one. And the third one is, and those two are very, global in sort of nature. And the third one, actually, I'm going to basically recommend something of my own because it's not my What Next podcast, which you'll have. It's the Rethinking Work show. So if you just go to rethinkingwork.io. And the reason for that is it's particularly true if you're younger in the audience. I'm talking to a lot of young people who are trying to reimagine their futures.
Rishad, what an utter pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so very much for being so kind and generous with your time and knowledge.
Most welcome. And hopefully this podcast turns out well and you share it widely and people can learn from it.
Absolutely. That's the intention. And that is a wrap on 2025. If you've learned anything today, I hope it's that your plumbing should be automated, but your poetry must remain fiercely human. Rishad has left us with enough provocations to fuel our entire 2026 strategy, minus the slide decks. Remember, the future does not fit in the containers of the past, so stop trying to pack for it. We'll see you for the Indian Ad Geek in the new year, but next Sunday, the Indian Ad Geek will have a very special year-ender episode. Listen out for that. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe. It's right there. That's the button. Leave us a review and share it with someone who might enjoy it. The Indian Ad Geek streams on all major podcast apps. Rishad is at Rishad on X, and I am at Vishal Van Mehra everywhere. Hit me up with your feedback. Until next time, keep your creative antennas tuned and your Ad Geek flag flying high. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, stay quirky, stay curious, and keep geeking out.